call the finance meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Markham?
Here.
Middleton?
Here.
Woodward?
Here.
McGillivray?
Here.
Quarles? Powell? Long?
Here.
Cowell? Here. Zach?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I need an approval of the minutes. Commissioner McGillivray, supported by Commissioner Markham. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those, anybody opposed, say nay. Motion carries. I need an approval of the agenda. Commissioner Kowal, supported by Commissioner McGillivray. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Public comment. I do want to bring up an issue that was brought up by Commissioner Middleton for all of us. So for those commissioners, we get an invitation to our meetings. And some of us are getting, cancellation of meetings because we're accepting. So, Mike Andrews suggested that if you get you're only going to get a cancellation of a meeting from board staff. So we need to look at this calendar process, and the only time you should respond to a cancellation if it comes from one of our staff, not one of our colleagues. But we will look at this whole calendar thing so we're not getting cancellation notices. Yes, Commissioner Kowal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So in the past, we've gotten our yearly calendar, and I sit there and I enter everything into my calendar on my iPhone. So are we now also going to do this invitation process, or?
We've been,
Yeah.
I do the same thing that you do, but we've had this invitation
Have we?
process for the whole year,
Yeah.
2019.
Okay.
They've been coming through, so. Commissioner Markham.
I admit, I'm the one who messed it up a couple of times. You were the one that said you canceled it. I'm like, she's nice.
Well,
Canceling
no,
it.
so I was doing what you were.
Meetings.
I was doing what you were. I was punching in the new calendar, right?
Yeah.
But when I did that, up shows, it like makes an adjustment on a former one, puts in the date for the new one, and I clicked on it like, okay, but that's actually putting it back into this automatic system, which messes it up, and I should never have done that, because that notified everybody, which it shouldn't have done, which is why I canceled it, and you got a cancellation from me.
Oh.
So that's what all that is. I apologize. I will never hit the little green line button again, and I hope I won't, don't make that mistake again. Obviously, I was.
Okay, so it's,
that on New Year's Day.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, I know. I think it was like
Hard-
when canceled.
I don't like football. How's that?
hard-working commissioners. So, any other public comment from the true public? So, see. Oh, thank you. I'm told. Okay, wait. I'm gonna have Mike introduce our.
So I'd like to introduce Sarah. She comes from us from Royal Oak Schools, I believe. She's our new senior community liaison, and she'll be working hard to support all the commissioners.
Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you.
Nice to have you. Welcome. Okay, any other public comment? Seeing none, that's closed. Communications, I need a motion, please. Commissioner Colwell? Commissioner Middleton, support. Okay, any discussion about the communications? Commissioner Colwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question about the overtime reserve. This year we had Department of Management and Budget fiscal year 2019 year-end report and budget amendments. That's under overtime. I was just curious as to if that's a normal amount that we would have in that category, or was that unusual?
That was a one-time funding request to provide additional security services within schools for the sheriff's office to use it at, so that was within the year-end report, and that was adopted with the year-end report resolution.
Okay, but this is the Department of Management and Budget fiscal year 2019 year-end report and budget amendments for,
Right, the
$80,000.
the amendment was included in that year-end report resolution.
so this is all about that one amendment.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we need a voice vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Regular agenda. Number 1, Corporation Council Fiscal Year 2020 Michigan Indigent Defense Commission Grant Program Acceptance. And I want to welcome Malcolm Brown and Mary Ann Yergi. Thank you. I need a motion, please. Moved by Commissioner Long, supported by Commissioner McGilvray.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is the second year that we have received a grant from, we received a grant from the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission. You will note it is lower, and that it's, really our grant is higher, but we had one-time only costs in fiscal year 19. So those one-time only costs were about 1.2 million. Those won't continue this year. Those are construction projects and equipment purchases and things of that nature. For this fiscal year, we are expecting a grant of approximately 4.1 million. And the county is fully up and running with the exception of arraignment-only attorneys in the Oakland County Jail. That is on pace, that construction project is on pace to be completed by the third week of February, and we will have 7 days a week scheduling of arraignment-only attorneys in the jail, fully operational by the first week of March. If there aren't any questions, I think all the positions are clearly defined in the resolution.
Any Commissioner Middleton?
Yeah, did the one-time, did those costs were within the one-time allotment that we were given? You say it's gonna be completed by February.
We received contract extensions for those items.
And, is the cost staying in within that, or are they overruns on, the cost?
They were overrun in 2019, and we were approved by the MIDC for budget adjustments.
To cover the cost?
It
Okay.
went from about 680,000 to 1.2 million
Okay.
due to increased costs in all of the materials for the in-custody spaces, the women's annex and the jail.
Go Commissioner Cowald and Woodward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know we've had issues in the past with the MIDC and the state government in general. Do you feel like we've made a lot of progress in this being an equitable, that the state is funding this like they said they would? I hate to put you on the spot, but I just want to know if we're in a better place as that goes.
There is some concern. They do have dedicated funding statewide for about $82 million. For fiscal year 20, the MIDC approved about $120 million worth of compliance plans. So they had roughly a $40 million shortfall. That was made up by unexpended funds from all the funding units in fiscal year 19. The grant contract really wasn't approved, and most of the funding units didn't get started until about the third quarter. So we had a lot of, $40 million worth of unexpended funds. They are using that to fund fiscal year 20. The commissioners did bring up at their last meeting at the MIDC in Lansing that they have to find more dedicated funding for this program. They have only been assured of about $82 million, and these compliance plans keep increasing. They have over the last 2 years. They went from 82 million to 120 million, and it's only expected to increase with the next standards that are being proposed to LARA. So it still remains a concern, the funding. We have not had an increase in our request for funding, so we are not the cause of the extra 40 million. That doesn't mean that we won't be in the future if, costs increase. But the the commission asked the MIDC staff to find a solution for this problem at the last meeting.
We are also working with MAC to address this problem too.
Okay, good, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And my question's along the similar lines. In terms of dollars that, or activities that we've expended, we've fully been reimbursed for all of those costs, or we're on schedule to reimburse for all those costs. Minus, I know the argument about the prosecutory uncompensated for extra prosecutory time. I put that in its own box because there's, I think, multiple ways of looking at that one. But in terms of like all the new construction, all the attorney fees, all the things related to this, our entire plan, everything that is in our plan fully reimbursed, that there's no additional general fund dollar obligations coming from us.
Just to let you know, we've been operating since October 1st without a grant, and they have allowed us to use our unexpended funds of $1.7 million to continue, the program, the indigent defense program, and all of the payments to the attorneys and experts and investigators. And we've also had contract extensions from the fiscal year 19, that $1.2 million has been extended through fiscal year 20 to finish all the construction projects. Fiscal Services will have their first financial status report by the end of this month. We have not been alerted to any cost overruns at this point, and we have not depleted our $1.7 million unexpended funds. So no, to my knowledge, no county funds have been used.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, call the roll.
Markham,
Yes.
Middleton,
Yes.
Woodward,
Yes.
McGillivray,
Yes.
Quarles, Powell,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Cowell,
Yes.
Zach.
Yes. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Item number 2, thank you. Treasurer's Office, resolution approving building authority refunding contract. I need a motion. Commissioner Powell, Commissioner Cowell supporting.
Hi, good morning. Jody Defoe from the Treasurer's Office. I am very excited to introduce to you the new financing team for the county. Last year, we went to RFP. It was a collaborative effort between the Treasurer's Office, Fiscal Services, the board, and purchasing. And we selected a new bond counsel, and we selected a new municipal advisor. So this is Jeff Aronoff from Miller Canfield and Brian Leffler from Baird. And so I will turn it over to Brian to discuss the refunding opportunities, which is one of the things a financial advisor does, is identify opportunities for savings. And so Brian can speak to those, and then Jeff can speak to exactly what the contract is, which is the item on your agenda.
Good morning. My name is Brian Leffler, with Managing Director with Robert W. Baird out of Lansing, Michigan. As I mentioned before, I was born and raised in Oakland County, graduated from Birmingham Grove, so it's nice to be back in the home area. With that, as Jody Defoe had mentioned, is that our job is to look at other refunding opportunities that are going on in the marketplace. And as you note, there are essentially, the Oakland County Building Authority has 11 outstanding transactions, and we've identified 5 transactions today in today's market that there would be actually interest savings by refinancing those 5 outstanding transactions. With that, there's going to have to be this refunding contract that I'll let Mr. Aronoff talk about, that would go through the Board of Commissioners, but there's also going to have to be action taken by the Oakland County Building Authority at its next meeting in February. Of the 5 transactions, there's going to be approximately $1.3 million of net present value savings, which is about 6% of the transactions bonds being issued. The savings are within the county's debt policy for essentially we're in compliance with that. So with that, we're happy to do this transaction. You'll note on your agenda there's an issue that's coming through for an IT project. The goal here is put the 2 projects together, the new money and the refunding. The purpose of that is to save on cost of issuance. You have synergy with the rating agencies, bond counsel, one transaction official statement. So again, that would essentially boost savings on any refunding transaction at this time.
Good morning, Jeff Aronoff from Miller Canfield. Pleasure to be in front of the committee this morning. Also an Oakland County resident, proud resident of the Chair's District. And we'll talk a little bit about the motion or action in front of you. As Brian said, that there will be action taken not only on the refunding, but on the new money project bonds that we'll talk about later by the building authority. The building authority is technically the issuer of the bonds, but the bonds ultimately are sold based on the county's creditworthiness. And the way that loop is closed is through, in the case of a new transaction, a building authority contract of lease, where basically the assets being financed are owned by the building authority but leased to the county. And this is probably a construct that sounds familiar to the folks on this committee. There are lease payments made to the building authority, which are ultimately the security for the bonds. It looks and walks and talks and quacks like a lease, but ultimately it's not truly a real property exchange. The building authority and the county are not arm's length kinds of parties where you would have a tenant and an owner in a commercial context. This is really a document that is an invention of the statute that allows the county's credit to flow through to bondholders of building authority bonds. In the case of a refinancing or refunding, you are refinancing that original contract. The building authority refinances the bonds, and then the county and the building authority refinance the contract. And that's what you're approving here, the refunding contract. Once the committee and the commission approve the refunding contract, there will be what we call a bond authorizing resolution adopted by the building authority, which will drill down on the terms of the bonds as Baird sort of works through the final terms and kind of analyzes the market, and then the bonds will be sold. That's the 30,000 or 15,000 foot view. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Commissioner Middleton.
You mentioned there was $1 million savings or so. The debt policy says that each bond has to have at least $100,000 net improvement in order to start to refinance it. Do each one of these 5 contracts fit that criteria?
Yes, sir.
Okay, by a lot or?
Pretty much a lot. Some of them do considerably. Some of them are just at the cusp. And again, if there's savings from these dual costs of issuance associated with the new money, it would contribute to keep one above the $100,000 threshold in the policy. I do respect that it's a policy, but if you had a situation of saving $99,000, but the other construct of that policy says you also have to be 2% net present value savings. For a very small transaction, that $99,000 savings may be 6% on that transaction. So it's kind of one or the other, and so.
Is that what the policy reads?
Yep.
It's one or the other?
Mhm.
Okay, I always just use the 100.
Yeah, again, it's a guide, I looked at it as a guidance, but for purposes here, not knowing where interest rates could be, we wanted to make sure that at this point in time, those that are on the cusp be included in this authorization in form of the refunding contract, and then also been identified to the building authority as well.
Do I have other questions? Commissioner Cowell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to know how our AAA bond rating plays into this, with or without the AAA bond rating. What would be the impact if we didn't have that?
I can answer that question. I don't foresee any change in the county's AAA bond rating at this time. For purposes under state statute, there will be a process of going back to the rating agencies, and it's been identified the last week in February, and then in the first week of March is when we anticipate that from both Moody's and Standard & Poor's, and that will essentially be part of the transaction. So as it relates to that, if you were not a AAA and you were down to, say, the AA category, what that means is probably 5 basis points, maybe 10, which is 0.1%, which would then, higher interest rate would reduce the interest savings or result in a slightly higher increase in costs on the new money project. what we have here is that these transactions that are, especially on the refunding side, are really fairly short in amortization, about 10 or 12 years. So I don't see that being a big change if the rating went from a AAA to the, say, the AA category, but we're not expecting that change at this time.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I just wanted to add a clarification. These are building authority bond issues, so there are a couple that have subleases for CMH and Oak Park. So those savings will be realized at those levels, not necessarily all county savings.
Any other questions? I do want to thank our new advisor and our new bond counsel. I like the creative thinking and looking at things differently, and I appreciate it. And working with you, it's great.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Woodward.
If I may, and I want to applaud the leadership of the chair, who's played a role in the new RFP and bringing on this, the new talent that we have here. I love to suggest, because I think both of them would make themselves available for all commissioners, and maybe there's a time in the future to have a more complex overview of the entire process, start to finish, because I think we've got new folks and new folks around this table. It might be helpful to have a deeper dive. I know all those who participated in the RFP process did their own deep dive, but I think that education was valuable to understand, and I think this is one of those examples in which the reason we bring bond counsel and financial advisors on board is to help realize maximum financial benefit to the county, and that's what this proposal is here. One question, and I know the answer to it, but I think it's good for everybody else. How do you get paid in all of this? Out of XO, I think it's important for everyone. I'm going to ask the question. I know the answer, but I think it's good for everybody to hear. How do you get paid? How do we pay you?
So I'll answer that question as well. So what happens in these transactions, there's a line item called cost of issuance. And in that cost of issuance are fees for bond counsel, your municipal advisor, rating agencies, any notices or publication, essentially any cost of doing the transaction. And that ties back to the net present value savings associated with the refunding. The word net is net of any cost of issuance associated with the transactions. And again, for purposes here on this, say, 5 refundings and a new money, essentially you have 6 transactions that are being bundled. We actually were then gonna just do a pro rata by the size of each transaction and share the cost against all of them. So that's how we get paid.
Yeah, it's my favorite question to answer, because typically when a client sees an attorney standing in front of them, they think the clock is running, right? And it always gives us great pleasure to remind and assure our clients that as Brian explained, we, like your municipal advisor, we as bond counsel get paid out of cost of issuance, a flat fee that doesn't vary with every phone call that you make or every question that you have, and only when the deal closes, and if the deal closes. So, anyone on the committee, and of course anyone, any of the staff should always feel comfortable calling your advisors and not worrying that the clock and the sort of cash register is ticking and chinging respectively.
Yeah, they made mention of this. The benefit of pulling all this together is that we've got one issuance, and so those costs are distributed appropriately across the board there. So there's cost savings instead of going out 2 separate times or multiple times.
I would just follow up with that some of those refunding candidates would not work on their own, period, because some of these fixed costs are so high. So the benefit for either the county or any subless would not be realized. So,
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's call the roll.
Middleton,
Yes.
Woodward,
Yes.
Gilray,
Yes.
Quarles,
Yes.
Powell. Yes. Long,
Yes.
Koa,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Zach.
Yes. Motion carries. With that, we move on to item number 3. Thank you for coming. Information Technology Resolution approving Building Authority Contract of Lease for the new county radio communication system. And we have Mike Kim from IT. I need a motion, please. Commissioner Powell with Commissioner Markham supporting.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you. So as Mr. Aronoff mentioned earlier about the building authority and the lease agreement, so part of this resolution includes your approval of that lease agreement for the new radio system bonds. The other part of the resolution includes the authority or the approval to issue up to $25 million in bonds for the radio replacement project. That project is approximately $57 million, primarily funded out of the radio fund. And the radio fund receives a significant amount of its revenue from the 911 surcharge that was authorized. We just increased that back in July through this committee. In addition to the funding out of the radio fund, we are looking at the moment based on the needs of the project, and I'll go through a couple of those needs here just briefly, at about a $18.5 million bond issuance. So that's the current plan is that that's what we would request, and obviously we're moving very quickly to finalize that number, working with our project team and with fiscal services. So we'll have that number will be nailed down. We don't expect it to be any different than that at the moment. So some of the things that we need to do in this project, we will have 31 radio tower sites throughout the county. And those need some remediation. Some of them need some structural work. Some of them need some upgrades. Most of them have small buildings, if you will, that house computer equipment and transmission equipment. So some upgrades are needed. And one of the other pieces of this project is we will move off of a Harris radio system, which we've been using for 15 years. It's end of life. We literally buy parts for this system from agencies that are decommissioning their Harris radio systems throughout the country. So we have been keeping that running, but it is end of life. It's very difficult to maintain and keep operating. We are moving to a Motorola system. There was a 2-year RFP process that the radio committee went through. That was a subset of Clemis and included public safety officers from throughout the county. One of the decisions that was also made that will be a benefit to the county as well as other surrounding counties is that we will be moving onto and in concert with the state of Michigan radio system. So we will be in sync with the state police and other surrounding counties that are on that system. So that's a huge radio communication benefit for public safety for everyone. A question that came up yesterday that will also be a benefit to the county. We have 2 entities, Southfield and Lathrop Village, that are on a private radio system today. They will be joining. So every CVT, every public safety agency in the county will be on this new Motorola system. So other things that the biggest expense of this project, frankly, are the radios. Jeff Neesmith, who's the manager of our Clemis team, actually brought a radio, and we can pass that around. This particular radio is from Motorola, as I mentioned. This particular radio is actually for a fire department personnel. It is intrinsically safe, which means it protects any damage of sparks if a fire person is in an unsafe environment where there might be explosion. So that radio is about $6,000, and we are buying upwards of 5,500
Not your
radios.
kid's walkie-talkie.
No, it is not.
It's like $100.
It's got heft.
Yeah, they are fairly heavy. So we have about 5,500 radios that we need to purchase, and again, the number of radios and all of that was determined through the radio subcommittee of Clemis. Yes, for all public safety agencies in the county.
Do I have questions from the committee? Commissioner Markham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You mentioned this is one of those fire units. When the committee was in here a few months ago talking about the units, there was a fire chief from, I think,
Auburn Hills, correct.
who was concerned that the units we were sourcing were not adequate So I just have a question as to whether that got resolved with that chief?
Her concern was really about a different piece of functionality, not necessarily these units. And Captain Meyer, who chaired that committee, can answer any specific questions. But we have actually reached out to her, and there are additional things that a radio system or and even broader, a communication system could do. And there are several things that are not part of the scope of this project, and that was the main concern that she brought in. Was there was functionality that she wanted for fire notification systems. And we do have ways to do that, but there's a lot of technology variables in that. And we do provide that functionality today. She basically was requesting an enhancement that's just not currently part of the current scope.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Woodward?
So, and I've had an opportunity to talk to Mike Tim, so I'm not gonna go into a lot of those questions, but there's a couple of things that we've talked about I think is important for the rest of the group, because it's been a conversation. First broad issue is that we're borrowing this money. So before, when we built the radio system, bonding wasn't part of that before, so this is.
In the current system 15 years ago, that's correct. It was funded entirely by the county.
So we're bonding out mostly to buy these devices, but also other infrastructure issue. Can you explain for the committee how what's the total finance plan to pay for all this? I mean, we mentioned that we did raise the 911 surcharge to bring in a stream of revenue.
Correct.
Money in the existing fund, their forecasted expenditures, there's lots of documents, that was led by Mr. Dado, that kind of like laid, I mean, I remember an earlier version that tried to lay out a finance plan to figure out how to finance this particularly over the life of any bond proposal, if we're gonna be able to use it. So could you walk us through just generally? And if this is redundant, my first finance committee in a year, so you can
I think it's
tell
a
me we're done.
good review
Sure.
for 2020.
Great.
Go
I
ahead,
just
Lynn.
wanted to point out one thing. With the first radio project, the radio surcharge was higher at that point. I think it was closer to 68 cents
Right.
per month versus the 42 cents. So I mean, there was additional revenue provided for that. This project is, Mike said, $57 million, and there has been equity built up in the Radio Communications Fund over the last 10-plus years to provide replacement of the system. And I'll let him go in a little bit more detail, but the other thing was, they were looking at a maximum bond issue of $25 million to cover that shortfall, and then the Radio Communications Fund would cover the principal and interest payment for the debt service. That maximum amount was also contemplating, if, worst case scenario, if the state did not reimburse us for the core infrastructure, the core EZNet, in which they have come through on that portion, so that has reduced our need to issue the maximum amount of bonds.
Correct, thank you, Lynn. We currently, in the radio fund, which is a separate Clemis fund and part of the overall IT funds that we manage, there's currently a balance of around $27 million. And that has been building up with the intent of this project coming. So the 18 million, gets us into that 45 million range, and then we are also allocating and looking at approximately $3 million a year, 3.8, coming into that fund just from operations. So we receive fees inside of the Clemis organization, we receive fees for the radio usage, and then also the 911 surcharge. So the income that comes into that fund, obviously, we are looking that the fund would have a balance in the year 2022 of only $1 million as we pull the money out of the fund, as we use the bond money. But then we would start building that fund up again so that we can do another project 15 years from now. In addition, at the moment, and this is still 10 years out, working with fiscal services and based on other debt payments that the county has responsibility for, the general fund would be able to also make additional deposits when we're out into year 2028. So that's beyond the scope of our current budget, if you will, And obviously, that's not, committed, but that is a current plan, that there would be additional monies available to go into the radio fund so that 15 years from now, we might not have to issue bonds for the next replacement.
And that's the result of the retiree health care debt being paid in full in 2027.
Great. And I think this comes back to some of the, I guess an annual question, because we have to constantly renew the surcharge authorization. The way to generate dollars to be able to support this is through a surcharge per wireless device, or a millage, or general fund dollars. And different communities do different things, or combinations of things to be able to accomplish the entire thing. Other ways to lower costs of the overall system, and if I say anything incorrectly, correct me, is decreasing the number of PSAPs. And I know that there's been a trend over a period of time to try to, that has led to consolidation. And from what I hear, we're kind of at the space that unless we figure out other capacity, additional dispatch stations, that something has to happen before significantly other consolidation happens. But there's cost savings to the system if we consolidate that. And what that secret number is, I don't know. I do know it's lower than what we have today, to potentially save some money. So I think those are other type of things to consider, that it changes the financial model going forward. In addition, and we don't necessarily have to go into all of the things, because I think we're kind of renewing, upgrading a system that has a lot more greater capacity. I know that when we were talking about this before, there was talk about borrowing from the tax revolving fund is a possible revenue stream to help support that. Is that off the table? We're not pursuing that at this time to help
That's
fund-
not required at this
That's
point.
not required under.
And that was under the assumption if we were not going to be compensated for the ESI net.
Or fully compensated for
Fully
that.
correct.
Right, okay, so we're not having to borrow against that to figure out how to finance. And then just something, I know that there's some members of finance and maybe the public finance committee, because around this conversation, the sheriff brought up issues around the school, and some of us, saw a presentation and the importance or need for our school systems to be directly tapped into this system. Talking to Mr. Tim, that the details of how it hasn't been completely fleshed out. When we were moving forward, I can put it out there, like, I was very bullish on making sure our schools were integrated in this, but if the plan's not ready and the rest of everything is ready, then plus the other building department stuff, I think we need to move forward to look at that. But that's, I would say, is another item on the list. We need to figure out how to do that. And so that is not included in this, resolving that issue that the sheriff's office brought to, I know, many of our attentions. I don't know if he did it to everybody. And then there's some other things, and it's a question, basically it's all a question of, this is how much money's coming in to be able to finance this. And I want to applaud everyone who's been working on this. Technology just grows exponentially year to year. These $6,000 radios will quickly become $12,000 radios, there's no doubt, to build up an equity so that any significant upgrade. And so I am definitely, I'm aware of kind of the things that aren't able to get done right now. One mentioned the issue that one of our fire chiefs brought to attention. I think we should constantly stay attuned to it. And when we look at broad budget priorities, is this something that we need to kind of rally behind and really get serious about moving appropriate resources? This system has done a tremendous job of relying on that steady line of revenue. I imagine in order to get those things, if it was a difference of moving from 42 to 45, there'd probably be a lot of support to be able to do that, but state law keeps us capped at that, at 42. So I think it behooves this committee to be constantly thinking about, how do we accomplish these other things? Because I think everyone around this table would agree that public safety, without doubt, is our most important responsibility. And this system is going to go a long way. There's going to be a significant improvement over what we currently have. And there's probably some other things that, and I don't want to say that they're not even nice to have. I think we should have, and we've got to figure out a way to pay for them. So. That really wasn't a question, but I wanted to share a little bit of our
So I have
conversation.
Commissioner Long and then Middleton.
Thank you.
What is your life expectancy on these, this radio communication? How many years do you think this will stay current, or when will we have to invest again? I don't know if we've heard that. I think you
Yeah.
said the last one was 15 years we lasted. What do you expect this
Yeah,
one to last?
and by the time we decommission it, it'll be 17 years. So, financially, from a financial perspective and, you know, to keep the bond part of the transaction correct, we are estimating, and it's a reasonable estimate, that they're 10 to 12-year assets, that they will last that long. Now, some of them, you know, might get broken or might get dropped. But as Mr. Aronoff has counseled us, it's the average life of the assets. And we're definitely in the 10 to 12-year from a financial perspective. From the project perspective, I mean, we are making this financial model go out to the 15-year mark so that we can do the planning for the next one as that comes up.
And so the physical thing, you're saying 10 to 12 years, but the technology, you think you're estimating that, right? You know, that radio, that technology, you think it's 10 to, that's a hard prediction, yeah.
Even as
yeah.
an IT guy,
Because it moves so
I'm not
fast,
that
and that's
good.
what I was, yeah, okay. Okay.
The good news about radios, I mean, in some respects, some of the technology of this system has been around since Marconi, right? I mean, it's 100 years old. Some of it hasn't changed.
Thank you. I know that was a hard prediction.
Commissioner Middleton.
Yes, the question about the schools, every officer will have one of these radios, correct?
Yes, sir.
How many schools do we have an agreement with, a liaison? I know McCabe came back to us after the recession, and we kept putting officers back into schools. Are most schools have an officer?
I think most schools will share an officer or have one assigned. I don't have the numbers, but I can certainly get them for you, Commissioner. I know that one of the expectations, talking to Sheriff Bouchard about this program, really was to get at least one additional radio in each school, as well as the capacity on the system to support those radios. We're
Okay.
talking, 350 to 400 radios minimum. And that's a lot of system capacity we have to look at. But that was the goal.
Okay,
And-
so we haven't abandoned schools, it's just.
Absolutely not. We're looking at all those options. We did the work back in August to get the numbers down right, 5 to 10% increase every year. We expect to see on that, but that cost and the operational objective is the same.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to clarify that the 911 surcharge revenue collections cannot cover things outside of public safety, so would not be eligible to cover any type of cost for the schools, including principal and interest related to these schools.
Are you done?
Yeah.
Commissioner Woodward.
So related to that, man, I learned that yesterday. And that doesn't make any sense to me. So it's one thing that I would actually, this committee or Lego or whatever, to look at possibly addressing that, because school safety to me is public safety, and I mean, that's the whole purpose of it in the first place. And things are the way they are right now. And so I think, in order to, at minimum, to have the flexibility, we should, but it's a state law that can be changed to allow for this, and the reality is that the revenue coming in, and based on this plan already, kind of the dollars have been spent, and so we'd have to figure out another stream of revenue anyway. But the general cost, probably mostly radio, probably some software, hardware, wire in to connect to that. I know I was personally moved by the information that the sheriff was sharing, some of the shock and awe of what happens in an emergency type of scenario. I don't think anyone around this table doesn't think that, making sure that we have best access to technology and making sure everyone can hear, and getting that information sooner is always better for all those type of events. So I'm definitely committed over the coming year to figure out a way to do that, as well as figuring out a funding stream for some of these other things that I know that the committee's considering. Trying to figure out, these are important. We got to figure out a way to come up with the extra money to make this happen.
And we appreciate that. It is Michigan statute that drives that. It's not our interpretation of it. It's pretty clear. And the state of Colorado, which the sheriff may have shared with you, one of the incidents with a school shooting, their state statute allows them to use the funding for the schools.
So it's something that we need to work with our Oakland County delegation to, and school
ma'am.
safety is an important thing, so.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, let's call the roll.
Woodward,
Yes.
McGillivray,
Yes.
Quarles,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Cowell,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Middleton,
Yes.
Zach,
Yes, motion carries. Item number 4, Department of Public Services, Community Corrections Division, Michigan Department of Corrections Office of Community Corrections Comprehensive Plan Grant Acceptance for fiscal year 2020. Barb, can you make it any more complex?
I apologize for that. I know it's a mouthful. Good morning, Barb
Oh,
Hankin.
wait, excuse me, I need a motion. Commissioner Kowal, with Commissioner Long supporting.
Again, good morning. My name is Barb Hanking. I'm the manager for Community Corrections. And before you today is the resolution for the acceptance of our annual Department of Corrections grant. For FY20, we have been awarded just over $1.8 million to help continue and fund the programs and services available through Community Corrections.
Any questions? I have a quick question, not related. The sentencing guidelines, were you part of that committee at all?
Are you talking about
In the state
the
that I'm
task force that
Yes.
just wound up? Not the sentencing guidelines committee, but I did provide, on the pretrial, pretrial subcommittee, I was invited to 2 of the subcommittee meetings, and I provided a lot of counsel to Pew on the pretrial area.
Great, I'm glad to hear that you were part of that. Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, let's call the roll.
McGillivray,
Yes.
Quarles,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Cowell,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Middleton,
Yes.
Woodward,
Is that there?
Zach,
Yes. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 5, Water Resources Commissioner, Upper Straits Lake Level Special Assessment Bonds, Series 2020, Full Faith and Credit Resolution. I need a motion. Commissioner Long with Commissioner McGillivray. So,
Good morning. I'm Glenn Appel, Chief Engineer at WRC. We're here today with our bond counsel, Laura Bassett, my new lake level engineer, Ryan Wolski, and Jason Say, who'll be the project engineer on this lake level project. We're here today to ask the board's approval of the project costs and special assessment role and full faith and credit of the county for the bond sale. We're also asking that the board also continue have the drain commissioner or water resource commissioner as delegated authority under the statute, lake level statute. I want to make a note, after hearing the previous discussions where the money's coming from, that these bonds will be repaid by the special assessment district. There's no money from the county involved with the repayment. I've also brought some photographs if the board is interested in seeing the condition of the old dam. Is there any? Yep.
do I, Commissioner Middleton?
Yeah, didn't we bond, is this a renewal bond?
No, sir. This dam was built back in 1964.
Okay, it's not the one, that Commissioner Bullard brought forward.
Oh, you're thinking about the lower Pettibone?
Yeah, well,
That was a sanitary
Pettibone.
sewer project.
Okay. Okay. I'm misinformed, yep.
No, this dam was built back in 1964, and as you can see from the photographs, it's reached the end of its useful life. We've had numerous meetings with the residents over the last couple of years. Find my notes here. Lots of notes. Going back to December 12th, 2018, we had an informational meeting with the residents. At that meeting, we gave them various options, to building the dam, even including removing of the dam. And there was no interest in having it removed. They wanted a new dam constructed. They want to have as much water in their lake as possible. So we proceeded with the final design of the project. And under the Lake Level Act, we had to have a day of review. We could perform that on December 12th. That was publicly notified and advertised in the paper. We also had another informational meeting on November 21st of 2019 with the residents, and overall are very pleased with the project and anxious for us to move forward with it.
Do we have the same situation up in Brandon Township on a dam up there? Can't think of the name of the lake, but they got a problem with a.
Yeah.
There's an outlet issue up there on Bald Eagle Lake.
Bald Eagle Lake, that's.
That's a chapter for drain.
Okay.
So that'll be a little bit different. I don't know how we're financing that. There's a project moving forward to replace that drain though.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I'd like a motion to receive and file these pictures. Moved by McGillivray, supported by Long. All those in favor of receiving these pictures?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay. Back to the original resolution. Any other questions, comments, questions? Seeing none, let's call the roll.
Okay, Quarles,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Koa,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Middleton,
Yes.
Woodward, McGillivray,
Yes.
Zach.
Yes. Motion carries.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Finally, our presentation from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. And I want to welcome back Margaret Warner. For those of you that started when I did, Margaret Warner was our head of our department of Oakland County Health and Human Services. She started in 2003 when several of us around this table started as commissioners. And those days were pretty dicey with our department, and there were many collaborative meetings between our county fiscal services, our judges, our court, our county commission, because operations were not as transparent, as smooth as they could be. And I want to credit Margaret for her leadership in really fixing that. We don't have any of those issues anymore. And I had the opportunity of talking with her a couple days ago, and I didn't realize that she's serving on our board. So she's our former director and giving of her time as a volunteer with her expertise. So I want to welcome you and thank you for your service.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Zach.
Thank you. There we go. Okay. It's great to be back at this table. As Commissioner Zach said, it's been a number of years. I was unfortunately removed from my position as director of the department in Oakland County when the Children's Services, Children's Rights lawsuit settlement was made with the department, and I was sent back to Wayne County. But shortly after I retired, I got a phone call from our then state director who said, hey, there's a vacancy in Oakland County and you're a resident. And I said, yes, I'd love to. So I'm now in my third term, and I'm very, very pleased to be here today because it's always good to keep our communication open with the commission. And it's wonderful to see, persons that I worked with previously, like Commissioner Zach and also Commissioner Woodward. So thank you again. What we want to do today is just kind of talk to you about what our request is. And what we're requesting is some additional resources for the board in Oakland County for the Michigan Department of Human Services. There are 2 members that are appointed by the commission as county appointees, and 1 by the state. I happen to be the state appointee just because of circumstances. And we have a really great board. We are actually here because we are asking for some additional money. But there are three things that are driving this request. The first being the additional travel expenses that our board members have because of our participation, increased participation in the Michigan County Social Service Association. I'll get to that in a minute. And also because the dues for that organization increased in 2014. We've been adjusting our budget accordingly since then to pay for those dues. Went up about another $1,150. There's also another reason for our request, and that is, of course, the increase in per diem. Thank you very much. We appreciate that, but it's going to mean more money. And our third request is essentially for the continued funding and support for the Furniture Bank. And what an incredible organization that is, and what that organization does for our county residents, particularly those who receive benefits from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services and the federal government and the county. Let me see how I'm gonna, this has been a while since I've used this. Let's see. Okay. Maybe somebody could show me. Yeah, how do? Oh, that's it? Okay, great. Thank you. I had wanted to also provide you with a report that our board chair, Dr. Grenee Dudley, who really wanted to be here today but had a family obligation, and I put together because we want you to know what the return on the investment that you give, that we give the county of Oakland. And I've got some copies, so I know that you have to officially allow that to be included. Here you go. Thank you. But Michigan County Social Service Association, again, that is the organization that has kind of increased our costs. And overall, all we're really asking for from the Board of Commissioners through the Finance Committee is an increase of $3,303.83. We have the ability at the county board level to adjust our budgets, and we have been doing that for several years. But as I mentioned just a second ago, our travel participation related to our involvement with the Michigan County Social Service Association has significantly increased for a couple of reasons. But first, let me tell you about the Michigan County Social Service Association. We represent the boards throughout the state, and there are, in fact, 83 boards that were formed as a part of Act 280. Act 280 was established in 1939, essentially provides the resources for cash benefits and child and adult services in Michigan. And our primary duty at the local level is to represent our constituents who are in need and who are supported by the department's programs, services, and resources. We're also, and this is part of the law, Act 280, we're supposed to legally advise the state director about the needs of the citizens and constituents that we represent in each of our counties. We demonstrate our participation in the association by being involved in committees, attending our annual conferences, and there are 2, and provide input and concerns that we become aware of regarding our constituents. And we also share how our local operations are impacted by what we get in resources from the state allocation, particularly as it relates to staffing and services that are needed in our particular county. And we also provide professional experience to the board because of what we as members bring. I want to just briefly mention our 3 board members. I mentioned Dr. Grenee Dudley White. She is our chairperson, and she became the chairperson shortly after I became the county director in Oakland County in 2003. And she is now, just recently has been elected the vice president of the association, the association's board of directors. And this is really quite a coup, because we have not had in that association a member from a county the size of Oakland in a real leadership position. for many, many years, because the association membership is at the board of directors level are primarily from smaller counties. But let me just tell you again, Dr. Dudley chairs now also, excuse me, for the association, the Development and Education Committee, which is responsible for planning our conferences, developing topics, and she is, given her history, is incredibly good at this. She also assures that there are training sessions that are provided via phone for members. And she is very responsible for helping to launch meetings with our state legislators. Every year we have a legislative conference, and we go personally to meet with members of our legislature, specifically from the Oakland County districts that we are from. Margaret Warner, that's me. Again, I'm the state appointee. I'm the vice chair of the board in Oakland County. And I also am responsible for the legislative committee for the state association. I've done that for a period now of 4 years. And what I do is every month I convene the members of the 3 committees that report on the review of legislation that impacts our constituents and our organization. And we then make decisions about those pieces of legislation that are pending, and we bring that to the attention of our board of directors. And I also chair the Children's Services Committee for legislative review. And when we're done with all that, we take that information and recommendation to our board of directors that meets the next day. Cherie Ross is an excellent member of our board. She is also, as part of the association, our representative on the District 6 committee. District 6 are all these southeast Michigan counties, Wayne, Oakland, Macomb, Washtenaw, Livingston, Jackson, etc. And she also is responsible for reporting to the board of directors every month at the board of director meeting on what kind of activities are going on in our district and other things that she is aware of. Just a real quick summary about our programs, because I think this is important for you all to know. We have economic stability programs. We have actually, I wanted to mention this, we have 2 separate directors in Oakland County. We are a large county. We are one of 5 counties in Michigan that has a separate cash benefit director and a Children's Services Administration director. They're completely independent of each other, but we meet as a board with those members every single month, and those are the kinds of services that those individuals are responsible for. Aging and Adult Services, actually that's now handled by our Business Services Administration within the department, but it impacts the residents of Oakland County. Just some quick information about cash assistance. That's the Family Independence Program. You can see that through the years, there has been a significant decrease. In fact, the average FIP, as we call it, payment per family in Michigan in 2017 was $366 a month. That's not a lot of money, but it addresses the need here in Oakland County for about 4 million people. And that includes families and children who are eligible for assistance. Not 4 million, excuse me, not 4 million. We pay for $4 million in, cash benefit assistance. Yeah, you're right. I think that's right. Medical assistance, that is a very big expense that happens in every county throughout Michigan. And you can see that through the years, it has also increased. And I'll give you more information about that. Food assistance has gradually decreased, but it is starting to go back up again. Child development and care, we have a lot of individuals who seek those services because there's a lot more people working. And a lot of people are working because you can only receive cash benefits for a period of 4 years, and that's it. You have to go to work. And unless you have circumstances in your family that prevent that. State emergency relief, we use that resource to prevent serious harm to individuals and families whenever they are in need. They have crisis situations like shelter needs, SER, what we call services, what is it called? Utilities. We help them with utilities as well. State disability assistance, we provide through that program cash assistance to eligible disabled adults. That has increased, as you can see, through the years. Children in poverty in Michigan has continued to decrease, and it is reflective here also in Oakland County. These are children the ages of 0 to 17. 29,433 children in Oakland County represents 11% of all the children who reside here who are in poverty. Children's Protective Services, a very active program, and unfortunately it continues to increase. And that is now a focus of our State Department and at the local level. We want to decrease the number of children that we remove from homes and assure children remain safe in care. And you can see that there has been a decrease in foster care, but statewide it continues to go up. Adoptions, we're having really good luck there. We realized 129 in 2017, and that number has only continued to increase, and that's in Oakland County. The Furniture Bank of Southeast Michigan. This is really an incredible organization that we made the decision some years ago to fund. Currently, we provide them with $19,800 and some dollars a year. We benefit from this organization because of our direct referrals of clients to them who are in need of furniture, and particularly through our Children's Services Administration. We have a lot of children when they come into care or when we're doing investigations of protective services, and we find out that children don't have adequate beds, they don't have appliances, stoves and refrigerators. We often refer them to the Furniture Resource Center, also called the Furniture Bank. In fact, the next page will show you that 90% of clients who had been supported through the Furniture Bank of Southeastern Michigan were referred by the department and are receiving department benefits. So they had a busy year in terms of providing services to our residents in need in Oakland County. But here's an important fact I want you to be aware of, and that's the cash that comes in to Oakland County from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. And of course, that's made up of federal dollars, state dollars, and county dollars. Medicaid is the big ticket. Of the $1.67 billion that are brought to this county through resources through the Department of Health and Human Services, 1.5 to 6 billion are serving people who are in need of medical assistance, Medicaid, Healthy Michigan. Our cash assistance dollars have really reduced. Thank you, $4 million in 2017. Food assistance, people are eligible for food assistance if they're no longer eligible for cash benefits, but that's going to change even now more because of the change to the Healthy Michigan program. But child daycare, that's also an increasing service delivery program. In 2017, over almost $9 million. State emergency relief, $1.6 million. State disability. So the total amount of money, again, that was brought into Oakland County by the programs delivered through the department at $1.67 billion. Our expenditures, here's our budget, and we wanted to make sure that you saw what it was in last year and what it is in anticipation of this current fiscal year. Our membership dues have not changed since 2017, or excuse me, 2014. but we're short $1,150.83. Our board travel has increased because we now have two board members, myself and Dr. Dudley White, who go to Lansing, me twice a month, and Dr. Dudley once a month for our meetings as a part of the association. That obviously has increased our travel. Last year it was by almost $1,900. We want to be able to continue to support the Furniture Resource Center by at least $19,816. We'd love to give more money because of what they do for citizens in Oakland counties, particularly citizens who are eligible and receive benefits from the Michigan Department of Human Services. So again, we are asking for an increase overall of $3,303.83. But, before we go any further, this is just, again, the information I shared with you about, that we had to move money because of the increase in cost participation that we had with the association last year. I gave you this document, and I think you've got to take an action on it in order for me to present it. This is what we are calling a return on investment. Dr. Dudley was really hoping to be here this morning, and in advance to this meeting, we sat down, we thought, you as our commissioners need to know what we bring to the county through our participation as board members. I'm sorry.
Thank you, I'm just trying to procedurally.
Yes, I'm sorry, I should shut up for a minute.
Okay, so I was just asking my analyst as far as the procedure, and what we need to do at this point is to receive and file this request. And then we will consider this in other ways, okay? So, moved by, to receive and file by Long, supported by Kowal. And also receive and file the PowerPoint, okay? And then, do I have any discussion about this? Commissioner Powell?
Oh, I'm sorry, I had a question. You said discussion.
Discussion about this, yeah.
Okay. Well, you had went over 2 items. What I'm seeing is the change in the food assistance program is like dramatically affecting a lot of young mothers in my community. They they have 2 and 3 kids, and they may make less than $22,000 for the year under taxes, by the way. Less than $22,000 a year, and I asked them, because we have to report if they have any assistance.
Sure.
And they're like, now, this year, it's like, no. Was that dramatic change too in the income for them? And is it with that and the 20 hours a week, you know what I mean? Like, was that a before with the changes?
Well, be aware that the federal government, the food assistance is totally the federal government's program. They drive how much money individuals receive, and so Michigan just administers the program. We, based on income, the levels that the feds set, that impacts food assistance. And we now know that, as people are actually leaving cash benefits, sometimes they think they can do without for a while, so they don't even continue to access or ask for food assistance. But it is an important program. We bring a lot of that resource to Oakland County, but a lot of people who used to receive it, they don't receive it anymore. And a lot of it is because, the income levels are such that if you make just a little bit more money, you're out of it. You're no longer eligible.
And my next question is CPS. Now, with CPS, they have opened up who can call. And is that the reason why the increase in CPS now? I've seen an increase in numbers.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, why did they do that? Meaning a teacher, social worker in the school. Like before, was it designated that certain higher ups could report a situation? And the only reason why I'm asking is because I can say this. My daughter had a situation at the school, and my daughter has not had a spanking since 3rd grade, but she had an anxiety attack because I took this phone. CPS called me. And I'm like, who reported? And it was some random social worker that took my daughter's report, and I understand they have to, so I went through the process, but I'm like, who all, you know, it's like the social worker calling, the teachers now,
Yeah.
like everybody can call on a situation. I'm like, why did they open that up like that? 'Cause
Well-
that makes it more, when you all have a shortage on employees, you see what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of
Yeah.
busy work.
It does. Couple of things have happened and have impacted that. Number one, it's our state legislators who decide who is going to be allowed to make referrals to Children's Protective Services. And not only that, we no longer directly take referrals. It goes to a statewide phone network where that information is taken. And so while they do some critiquing and some, filtering, we get the majority of those complaints, and we have to go out. So there's a lot of complaints, but we don't take a lot, there's less action that's taken, and certainly the number of children that are coming into care has reduced, and that is a huge priority now. We need to make sure that we assure safety in the home, reduce the number of kids that are coming out of care, because when you come out of care, out of your family, that has a lifelong impact. So we want to make sure kids are safe at home and only stay, if they do have to return or be removed, return as soon as possible.
Well, what I will say is y'all have a great program, because they chased me down until they caught up with me, checked out everything, and I was like, oh, so this is what CPS do. So y'all your workers doing a great job.
I will tell our county child welfare director, Tom Shire, of that exact information when we meet with him next week. Thank you. Thank you.
So, I've been advised we're receiving and filing this information, and the reason we're hearing this at Finance Committee is that I'm going to ask that it's in the fiscal services hands, that we look at some type of budget, finding some funding, some type of budget amendment to our next quarterly report, that we can be part of that you find the funding request, and then we can vote on it collectively as part of our regular review, quarterly review.
Okay.
Does that sound good to our committee?
Excellent.
Sure.
Just one quick question. Thank you, Ms. Warner, for your presentation. It's very thorough. I was just wondering, we're in 2020, and I realize that you wouldn't have 2019 numbers yet. But does it take a while to get the 18 numbers?
Yes, but
Okay.
I can.
I'm sure if you had them, you would have presented them.
You better believe it. Yeah, I was like, why don't we have recent numbers? If you'd like the recent numbers, I would be glad to provide those to you when they are received.
So,
Okay.
that would be terrific.
Will do.
Just a heads up, I don't know at this point whether you're doing quarterly or reviews through your liaison committee, which would, I think, be Healthy Communities. And we used to get some type of review, like a report or presentation periodically, and I just think it's really good to keep that communication open again, so that we're aware of what's going on.
Would you like a member of the board or a member of our management administration? Both?
I think, what? We'll reach out
Okay,
and talk
all
about it
right.
and say what.
I'd really like to hear about that. I'll be honest with you. We haven't had a lot of information as a board about that particular committee, so.
Yeah, well, no news is good news, but at the same
Okay.
time, being aware this is an important constituent service issue.
Mm-hmm.
And that impacts all our residents, and just being brought up to date, all of the wonderful services that you're providing.
Thank you.
So we need
Be
to
happy
take a vote, a voice vote. All those in favor of the action, say aye. To receive and file, as we discussed. Aye. Anybody opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you so very much. Wonderful to be a part of this morning.
Oh, a meeting is adjourned at